turbines. Thank you for having us today. We're really happy to be here and meet everybody. Due to the importance of so many issues, we will be yielding some of our allotted time to two really special speakers. Bonnie Brady, Director of the Long Island Commercial Fishing Association, and Megan Lapp, Fisheries Liaison for Seafreeze. Both Bonnie and Megan testified last week at the U.S. Congressional Field Hearing in Maryland. I'm sure you'll be interested in what they have to say. And right now, I'd like to introduce you to my fellow Act for Whales board member, Amy DeCibio.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm going to book through this, and some of the material will be a little bit redundant, and so I'll go even faster. But let's just start. This first slide is something that you saw from Lisa earlier. It's just to give you some perspective. I know you all see turbines here on the Cape. The ones that are happening offshore will be very much larger, really more comparable to the size of the Chrysler building in New York or the John Hancock Tower in Boston. This blue sort of Pac-Man piece is the Vineyard Wind lease area, the Vineyard Wind project that is currently underway. You can actually see the turbines at night from Hyannis. And as large as it is, take a look at it versus the size of Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard. Those are the two islands there if you're not familiar with the geography. What's more shocking is what's coming. So that little blue Pac-Man is now a little green Pac-Man in the northeast corner. And these are really sizable projects. This is a gigantic array, as we've explained earlier. This is, this will be an array larger than the state of Rhode Island. So let's talk a minute about Act for Whales. As we said, our group was formerly known as Act Residents Against Turbines. We've tried to come up with a little bit of a more positive name. But our primary environmental concern is the impacts from offshore wind power plants. And we really believe that they will destroy the safe haven for the critically endangered North Atlantic right whale. There's been so much effort to try to preserve this endangered species. And it's not just because they're beautiful, majestic creatures, but they also play a very important role in the ocean. And Bonnie Brady will probably talk about that a little bit more. But it's very important to the biodiversity, and really they provide a very important role for the food chain. And we're not the only ones that think that. A couple of, this was last year, I believe the New Bedford Lights, one of their journalists exposed a letter through a Federal Freedom of Information Act. And there was a lot of publicity about it. I think there should have been a lot more. But Sean Hayes has a pretty big role as the chief of protected species at NOAA's National Northeast Fisheries Science Center. And he'd written a letter to the Department of Interior expressing some of these same concerns around the North Atlantic right whale, and in particular, that offshore winds could really cut the production of zooplankton. And that, again, is the basis of the food chain. He suggests a buffer zone, but essentially the overriding comment from the report was that there is no mitigation for this, that essentially you can't build these offshore wind power plants in this area. The buffer zone he was talking about is the zone between the red and the blue line. So you'll see that impacts every one of the projects in this lease area. The next few slides I'm going to show you, these are all slides. These are NOAA's slides themselves. The overwhelming takeaway from all of them is that much more research is needed. However, all of these projects have received permitting, or the Vineyard Wind project has received permitting. So I won't go into too much depth here on sound, but I will tell you that the Save the Right Whales Coalition, a coalition that many of the speakers and their organizations belong here today, did produce a report recently that shows that there is a direct link between the survey work and the whale deaths that we are seeing, an absolute correlation, despite what you are reading in the newspapers. And I think Lisa Quattrocchi-Knight gave a pretty good explanation as to what's going on there. Similar with hydrodynamics, I think the line across the top says it all. Effects of large-scale wind projects on local and regional currents and weather patterns are unknown. That's a little scary, especially when you're on Nantucket, 30 miles out to sea. It also indicates that there's much more research needed for understanding EMFs. I won't elaborate on that. We've talked about that. This is a little bit of a different picture that Lisa showed earlier from this UK study, but it does show deformed lobsters, and they are attributing it to EMFs in the cabling. One thing I think is incredibly important here, there's always a lot of we throw the words green and renewable around all the time like they mean the same thing. They don't. Wind is a renewable energy source, but I think we've talked about a lot of reasons why this is not a green project, including all of the components that go into making a turbine. We're talking about steel, cement. We've talked about all the oil that are in these projects and the cabling that they're being pile driven into the ground. And I think that's a very important distinction that everyone really needs to get a handle on. Renewable does not mean green. I think the most important thing on this slide, though, really is the last sentence that's highlighted. And again, that's been mentioned twice in 2 other earlier reports, that essentially, the government's own words are saying that their own documents relating to all of these projects are clear that the impact on climate change will be so small that it will be immeasurable. So I guess I scratch my head and say, what's the point? Another thing that we should all be thinking about here is, hang on, let me just catch up. I'm trying to fly through this so fast. Energy from offshore wind is expensive. So on a very practical level, yesterday, the market price for energy, for electricity in southern New England was less than $27 a megawatt hour. The Vineyard Wind Power Purchase Agreement is contracted over a 20-year average nominal cost of $89 a megawatt hour. That's a gigantic difference. I think it's also important to note that 2 of the projects, Avangrid projects, have pulled. Okay, so this is Commonwealth and Park City Wind, both citing economics, saying interest rates have climbed, we've got supply chain issues. But I think what's important to understand there is they have paid $70 million in fines to do that. They plan to come back to the table to renegotiate. $89 is not going to be what they're looking for. They're looking for more. So we, the New England ratepayers, will be footing that bill. It's pretty clear that rates will not be getting cheaper. Just to talk a little bit about Nantucket. Nantucket is the largest and one of the oldest national historic landmarks in the United States. And one of the main reasons it has that important designation is because of the view shed. That view shed is enjoyed by people who come to Nantucket to visit from all over the world. And like the Cape, Nantucket relies heavily upon tourism. If you can take a look at this slide, this is what's coming. This is not our slide. This is coming from the Vineyard Wind DEIS, I believe, or the South Coast Wind DEIS, sorry. This is a slice of it, but this is the view from Sanford Farm, so we're not even on the coast here. There are a couple of outstanding reasons why we have not heard too much about this until more recently. And they're a little bit touchy, but I think it's something that we really need to consider. Everybody here probably remembers when Cape Wind was supposed to be, building their power plant here in Nantucket Sound. And that project was successfully thwarted by a group, Save Our Sound. And the sad part is we don't hear much from them these days. In fact, we see on their website that they actually list among their supporters some wind companies. They were also heavily involved in siting the projects on the other side of Nantucket. So it's a shame because they've had a great voice. They had a lot of credibility. They have a lot of backing by a lot of organizations and municipalities around the Sound, but I think that's really kind of unfortunate. Similarly, another touchy subject are the many 501c3s that have unfortunately taken money from the wind companies. So again, this potentially compromises their voices. We are not hearing enough from them. These are all very important organizations that have been the tried and true organizations standing behind the North Atlantic right whale and standing behind the health of our ocean. And when they're not speaking, our legislators don't hear them and we don't hear them. So I think that it's one of the reasons why we're all pretty late to the game on this. Just quickly, because I know we're running out of time, I just wanted to let you know our organization does have a lawsuit. We have the first lawsuit against the first project, against the Vineyard Wind project. We are in U.S. appeals. Thank you. Can thank Val Oliver for that. We are in the U.S. appeals court right now, and we are hoping that this Chevron deference thing gets overturned in the Supreme Court, and maybe that'll help all of our cases. But the essence of the lawsuit is, hey, U.S. government, you're not paying attention and following your own endangered species and environmental protection laws. That's the gist. You can read the details on our website if you'd like, actforwhales.org. Just so it's clear here, this Vineyard Wind project is the tip of the spear. All of the other projects that come up use that, and the baseline is lowered. The standard has been lowered. So I do, I think that that's something that everyone should consider. It's very important to be pushing back against these projects. And lastly, I'll just leave you with, it's great to be here with everyone. I think it's important that we all work together. Everybody's voices collectively can maybe stop the madness. Stay wild. Thank you. I now want to introduce Bonnie Brady, who's going to come up and do a quick presentation for you as well.
Fine, quick.
Yeah.
Need my glasses. I do, and I did this thing, so I put that there. Okay,